that element of fear. And so a lot of that sort of gets translated into anxiety, but anxiety and excitement are oftentimes hand in hand. And so oftentimes I'll try and distort it into being, it's not anxiety, it's excitement. And so then it becomes a thrill. And then also I do have enough of a kind of existential, I think, acceptance that we are all very much going to die. And once you can really kind of tap into that and feel that you're actually going to die at some point, there's the biggest, most overwhelming feeling of humility that comes with that. And once you have that, then everything else just feels like play. And so then the biggest adventure or the biggest fear or threat is just a big experiment in play, because yeah, you might die from it, but you probably aren't going to. And if you can be okay with dying, then you get to sort of do it with arms wide open and with full vigor. And that's much easier said than done, 100%. And you definitely go in flows of like, well, no, there are times where I feel like I've accepted my death. And then other times where I'm like, no, I love what's going on right now. It would be a tragedy if I were to die. But I think it's riding those waves a little bit. So I'm getting better at waking up and saying, how am I at now? Am I good? If I'm not good, can I be okay not being good? And sit with those feelings and work through them and let that inform what comes next. And not let it dictate your life, but also not bottle it down. I mean, that's why I wanted to make this movie, is like, I feel like today there's a giant population of people who scapegoat their darkness and their shame and their struggle. They sort of say, no, I'm fine. I'm a good person. And we're all trying to justify that we're good people. And I'm of the opinion that no one's a really good person. I think we're all pretty screwed up, and to a very core level, and that none of us really deserve redemption. And yet we have the opportunity for redemption nonetheless. And so then when everyone is really deserving of death, then what do we do with life? And so then I found that the only way of being able to live in a way that provides gumption and confidence and strength for both you and for those around you is to be able to look at that shadow side of yourself, to say, yes, you're there. Yes, you exist. Yes, you sometimes make decisions for me, and I hate that. But I don't hate you. You are important to me. You are an important aspect of me, because without you, I would not be whole. Because light is only as good as the dark that represents it. And like those two are a battling force that need each other. And so then I like to use the dark in order to fuel the light, and then vice versa. And I think that battle is the battle of humanity in a certain respect. And I don't feel like people talk about that very often. And I wish people did more. I think it would ground us in a way that we would understand so much more about each other and the struggle that we all go through. And it would just kind of give us patience, where we're like, hey, we're all kind of just trying to figure this out. We don't know what we're doing, but we're doing our best. And then we can sort of have a little bit more room to say, and he's probably doing his best. And if he's not, how do I help him? Or say, yeah, that's okay. Like I like doing that, of feeling like the person in the room that is going to kind of just accept you no matter what you've done. I don't care how heinous it is. I'm just going to sort of accept you and be like, yeah, that's how you are. And that doesn't mean that it's okay. That doesn't mean that it's acceptable, but it allows real conversation to happen. And when real conversation can happen, real change can happen. I don't think people are changed by logic or statistics or through forcing behavior on people. I think people are changed through one-to-one individual relationship or private revelation. I mean, mainly because those are the ways that I'm changed. And so it's like, well, if I can create a communication format, a story essentially, that allows someone to have a private space to be able to reconcile some of their darker natures, then I've done more than I could have ever hoped to do, while also giving them a really fun, enjoyable ride. Like, yeah, no, I love movies just because they're fun too. Like, I want to do both. I want it to be just entertaining, where we have 2 hours of escapism, but then also we leave with some little piece of wisdom that gets to hang on to our hearts and say, all right, now we know a little bit better how to do this crazy fucking thing called life.
As a filmmaker, what are some of your favorite films?
The movies that made me want to make movies are the Lord of the Rings trilogy. That still, to me, feels like the peak of how, I mean, they're so masterful in so many different ways and so beyond their time.
Mm-hmm.
They invented technology for it. They perfectly cast it. They brought fantasy to the screen in a way that had never been done before. And I've never had anything other than Star Wars that's done that same sort of magic for me, especially as a child. If I were to talk about some of my favorite movies that I've seen since then, it would be In Bruges has a special place in my heart. That's like a British gangster film. It's just one of those masterfully written movies that feels just tight and complete, and was a movie that just shocked me and surprised me by how enjoyable it was. And then also Amélie. It's a French movie. And that movie, again, had visuals unlike anything I'd ever seen. And I thought going into that movie it was a horror movie, and it ended up being this very French romance movie. And I am a deep, deep lover of love. And to capture an authentic love that transcends, and when movies can do that in a way that hits my heart that way, those movies end up being kind of my favorites. So Pride and Prejudice is another one of my favorites. Like, yeah, I'm sorry. That movie is just a masterpiece. I don't care which version of it you're talking about. I love the Keira Knightley version, and I will watch that movie every year. So there's certain like themes and ideas that usually end up being my favorite movies. And then there are other aspects of filmmaking that I really enjoy and admire. So yeah, it's like favorite movie versus best movie is always a different kind of conversation. But those are, I think, some of my favorites.
Wonderful. With everything that you've done and experienced so far, what would you say has been the best advice that you ever received?
I feel like the one that hit me, that was the first one that I ever felt, was I was raised Christian, and there's a complicated relationship around that, but there was one sermon about your yes being your yes and your no being your no. And I remember that hitting, because I am a chameleon in a lot of ways. I like to make other people around me feel safe and comfortable and seen and sought, and oftentimes at my own detriment of standing up for what I believe in and what I feel is right. And it was a really good lesson in, Micah, if you say yes, do it, and do it fully. If you're not going to do it, say no, and say no fully. There's I think a lot of conflict and struggle comes from indecision. And so as I get older, I'm working more and more on having a solid decision and sticking to it once I do it, having a decision of conviction. And so I think that's probably the best.
Great. Well, Micah, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I really appreciate it. If the listeners would like to obviously support your work, see your movie, or follow you online, where are the best places they could go to do that?
Best place would be Facebook or Instagram. So facebook.com/The Noble Animal, and Instagram is Noble Animal Film. And so either one of those is good if you want to sort of see the artwork that we have, some of the video clips talking about the story, and then also once we get our promo completed, that's where you'll be able to follow and see what the movie's actually going to look like.
Excellent. So I will put links in the show notes. People can click right through.
Awesome.
Again, thank you so much, Micah. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. This is great. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Advance Your Art podcast. If you like this episode, please go into iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button so that every single time I release a new episode, it will go directly to you without even thinking about it. If you're interested in hearing older episodes, please go to advanceyourart.com, where you can find the catalog of everything I've done so far, as well as contact information and projects I'm working on. Thank you again, and have a great day.